Can everybody hear me? Great. Okay. Well, Philip, thank you for that generous introduction. I was asked to talk about 3 topics in 20 minutes, and that's quite a challenge. So I'm going to talk about how corporations, big businesses work with startups. You're going to find different permutations across the industry, but essentially there are a number of different ways that corporations work with startups. I'm going to talk about enterprise market. We see a lot of B2C businesses today, but there is a tremendous opportunity in the enterprise technology markets where startups selling into large corporations. And lastly, I'm going to talk about ecosystem. We heard a lot about ecosystem, but what does that exactly mean about ecosystem? So I'm going to start with Thomson Reuters as the base, just to give you a view of what is an enterprise company that's selling into other businesses. We heard a lot about developing from a services company into a product company, and in order to be a product company, you have to understand what clients want in their industries and what kind of problems that they are trying to solve. So Thomson Reuters is a $13 billion business. It works in 170 plus countries. Most people know about the Reuters business, which is the news agency based in London, and it merged with the Canadian business Thomson about 5 years ago. And together they have a very powerful content platform. So we sell into a number of different industries: the banks, the financial institutions, the pharmaceutical companies, the consulting firms like Accenture, the tax and accounting firms, the governments, and the universities. Throughout all of the solutions, we sell content that's powered by technology. So people think about Thomson Reuters as a content business. It is, but in the back end is tremendous technology that's powering all the real-time content that's streamed through the financial service industry around the world, going through all the consulting firms that they are using our content and research to help their clients to make decisions. So what do I do in a company like this? I don't have background in financial services, legal, tax and accounting, or IP and science, or media, but I do know about technology. I grew up in the enterprise technology industry, and increasingly so, just as the technologies is disrupting our lives as consumers, technologies is disrupting industries worldwide. And many of the businesses don't realize that today, but they will. So my role, and extending to how corporations work with startups in a number of different ways. So we have 4 ways of working with early stage companies. We make investments. We think about how do we adopt new and emerging technology in the future, 2 years down the line, 5 years. We think about how can we help the businesses to use some of our content, or how can we adopt some of the data and content that some of the other businesses or startups are producing. And lastly, joint product innovation. So this goes back to one of the speakers talk about partnership. It's no longer just selling your product into a company. It's about finding the right entryway to partner, to augment features, to co-build products for that joint go-to-market. And I work for the Chief Technology Officer at Thomson Reuters, and we think about technology in a variety of different ways. People talk about big data, talk about fintech. Thomson Reuters is a big data company. We were there. We're practitioners of big data. We're practitioners of fintech. We're practitioners of legal tech. And we see in every single industry here, if you think about the law firms here, if you think about the banks, every single industry is getting disrupted, whether they're selling to the retail space, the consumers, or selling into the businesses. And the disruption comes from user experience, it comes from the back end, it comes from the front end, it comes from infrastructure, it comes from security, and then the list goes on. So there's incredible opportunity in the enterprise space around the world. So let me talk about enterprise shifts. A couple of different things. One is build, partner, and buy. In the old days, we see either companies just build, and they build everything on their own. and they have the mentality of build proprietary technology and not using third-party technology. And that world has changed with open source and third-party innovation, and the pace has moved much faster. So now it's no longer just partner, build or buy, but partner. And partner through innovation, partner through distribution, partner through marketing. So if any of you are building enterprise technology startups, you should think about the paradigm shift in terms of not just selling into the businesses, but how do you find strategic opportunities to partner through very small projects, pilots, through your beta, and then eventually scale from there. The next trend is transform through as a service, right? This is very intuitive to the audience here. We do everything on our phone. We do everything when we want, where we want. All the services, which are actually software solutions, are delivered to you at your endpoint. This is a new, relatively new concept in the business world. And a couple years ago, or 10 years ago or more, you have Amazon started with cloud services. You have Salesforce with CRM as a service. And then you start to have Microsoft and others with platform as a service. That's great, but the businesses are seeing more changes. So it's no longer just about having those traditional software delivered as components to the audiences or the clients, but other things, right? Sales as a service, data as a service, design as a service. People realize the powerful change in partnership and the fact that a lot of the big clients don't have the budget or the investments to do everything on their own, and they need to be able to deliver a modularized framework for ease of consumption, deployment, and integration. And that's something that I will say that the next wave of enterprise startups in the US, in Europe, will continue to find opportunities in. It's no longer about building cloud as a service, software as a service, but other as a service solutions that many of the businesses need and want, and they just want to have a very simple integration into their existing infrastructure. The next one, I think, again, is very innovative, very intuitive to this audience, right? Agile development, MVP, you change with the feedback from the A/B testing. That's something that the large companies don't necessarily do well, aside from the Google and the Facebook and the LinkedIn of the world, which actually grew from startups. The traditional companies, most of the companies that are driving significant economic progress in GDP, they don't have this concept in-house. So they need software and experts like you who build tools to help them to have better DevOps, to have better Agile development. And that's another opportunity and shift that we see. I'm not going to talk about transform legacy systems, but if any of you work for a company that serves banks, serve healthcare, you know that these companies have made significant IT investments in the last 20, 50 years. And they're confronted with how do we move from those legacy infrastructures into the new emerging technology while not just destroying all the infrastructure they have. So there's going to be technology, Mick talked about his current startup. I mean, those are the kinds of things that people are looking for, which is the integration on top of the legacy system and help clients to have better ways to work, better ways to integrate without having to make that investments significantly to rip out their existing infrastructure. The last one is something that is very interesting to me and to Thomson Reuters, which is data-driven, machine-driven innovation. So we talk about big data, we talk about big data analytics, we talk about visualization. The world has moved on, in my opinion, right? People know what data analytics is. We know how to do financial reporting. We know how to look at user metrics real time. We know how to use those feedbacks to evolve our products. And we know how to visualize those with the open data, with other data. But the real innovation, the next wave of innovation that's going to disrupt a lot of the industry is through data science, through statistics, through algorithms based on machine learning and artificial intelligence, as we previously seen. A lot of the tasks that these traditional industries are doing, whether it's call centers, whether it's filings by law firms, whether it's basic market analysis by analysts. Based on the technology and the innovation that I have seen, those are going to change in the next 10 years because our machine learning and natural language processing algorithms are going to be much better. So if any of you are studying computer science in the audience and you're studying AI, you're studying deep learning, machine learning, think about how you can apply that to big problems. Think about how those algorithms, those computer technologies are going to be able to change a lot of the industries that have been somewhat conservative and protected. A lot of the workflows are going to be automated, right? Of course, there's always going to be the crowdsourced human factor to help you refine the last mile of automation, but we already see, right, a lot of the translation services today are done by machines, not by human. A lot of the news generation are done by machine, not journalists anymore. So, scary to think that, but this is where the society is going. This is why a lot of the enterprises are looking at us in terms of emerging technology. Now, I want to talk about kind of the opportunities and problems that we see. One of the articles that came out of Y Combinator, which is one of the well-known accelerators and incubators in the US, they talk about their investment and incubation philosophy, and they talk about the big problems they're trying to solve. Nothing wrong with consumer applications, nothing wrong with a lot of the innovation going on, but there is a big world out there in the enterprise market that has been untapped, in my opinion. I see hundreds of startups, and I rarely see very interesting enterprise startups that are tackling these problems. But in the next 5, 10 years, and 15 years, whoever is going to figure out and build solutions empowered by innovative technology around these problems are going to win big in some of the markets. For example, supply chain. How do you take agriculture produce from Romania and be able to track the source of production to the endpoints, the destination of the agriculture products? And how do you allow the financial advisors, the traders, the regulatory compliance, the agriculture entities to understand where those goods are moving? That's something that we haven't seen built today, but it will come. That supply chain is a huge problem. It's a huge opportunity for a lot of companies. And be able to see real time where the goods are, how it's being delivered through the different endpoints is incredibly challenging and great opportunity. The next, couple integration, I talk about integration with legacy platforms. That's a tremendous opportunity in the enterprise world. Security, we heard the first presentation about cybersecurity. That's a huge market in the US, in Europe, and everywhere. It's not about the security of the systems, it's security about the endpoint devices that many of you use to hackathon with, and security at the user base. And then data management. Again, data management is not just about analytics and visualization, but the entire lifecycle data management, from how do you ingest petabytes and petabytes of unstructured data from all over the world, right? Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Instagram, how do you identify the real insights from those content, be able to cleanse, normalize, visualize, and then deliver to the businesses where they can actually use those insights to make money and to make their customers have better experience. The next one is talent development and management. So in the US, at least, we see a lot of startups working on connecting talents, especially developers, with the enterprises. That's great. It's a very crowded market. But a lot of the enterprise move beyond that, right? With how do you retain the talents? Once an employee is part of a company, how do you use different ways to understand whether an employee is going to stay with a company? That takes machine learning algorithm, it takes analytics, it takes real-time feedback, and that's another area that has tremendous opportunity in the enterprise space. And last one is regulatory compliance. As part of Europe, in US, we see lots of regulatory complexities produced by the governments, and lots of the businesses have to navigate through those regulations. So how do these businesses be able to understand what their employee has done by the minute, by location, and whether it complies with certain rules? It takes software, it takes technology to enable that. And we talk about how do you kind of think about taking those themes and opportunities into a business plan. When you sell into the enterprise markets, just like you're building a consumer application, you have to be very focused. You have to very focus around what you're trying to do and what is the value proposition. You can do either two things. One is you're going to increase revenue, drive more market expansion, or increase customer experience for the enterprise. Or you're going to help them optimize their infrastructure, optimize their supply chain, reduce costs, and reduce waste. And a lot of the startups I see, at least, can articulate that, what we call the ROI story, right? Return on investment. If you're selling to a big customer, you have to be able to very clearly articulate, even at the MVP stage, if your product is going to help them drive revenue, acquire new customers, improve experience, or do the reverse, is help them optimize their expense infrastructure. All these different themes, I just touch upon a few of them. There are actually many in the enterprise, relate to all the industries, right? Whether it's financial services, energy, logistics, agriculture, education, healthcare. Many of those industries are actually very active here in Romania, very active in Eastern Europe. And I would encourage you to think about, as you read what these big companies are doing in Romania, Eastern Europe, what are the problems they have? Maybe not now, but in 5 years and 10 years, and how do you think about that as an opportunity to use software to help them change? And I'm a firm believer that technology is going to completely change many of the companies, how they do business today. And we talk about mobile, we talk about Internet of Things, we talk about software as a service. Those are distribution of your technology, right? You have to think about how do you apply those technology-enabled distribution mechanisms to the problems. And I think defining the product, and how those are going to address the different part of the enterprise challenge is going to be a huge opportunity. Now I'm going to quickly talk about ecosystem. So we heard a lot about ecosystem today. What does that mean? And I actually missed one circle on my chart, which came through earlier today. But this is ecosystem, right? This is how Silicon Valley is built. This is how New York is built. This is how London's building it. This is how Denver, Colorado is building it. This is how Austin, Texas is building it. This is how Singapore is building it. It doesn't take the entrepreneur. It doesn't take the investors. It doesn't just take the industry, right? I'm from the industry. It takes everyone to actually work together. Innovation ecosystem takes all parts. It takes universities to have favorable intellectual property rules for professors and students who innovate within that environment. It takes universities to have entrepreneurship programs to teach students about business plans on top of technical skills. It takes professors and alumni of universities to mentor and advise students who aspire to be entrepreneurs. And you see that very well done at Stanford, right? Stanford has Stanford X. It has very integrated program with the ecosystem. You see that done in New York. You see that done at London, at the Imperial College. I mean, the list goes on and on. But academia play an incredibly important role in the incubation of ideas and the ability to have young entrepreneurs to actually have the tool set, both on the business side and the technology side, to work together. Now, the next one is actually government, right? I'm not going to talk about VC for now. In especially the emerging markets, government play a huge role in nurturing the incubation through grants, through connecting the industry to the entrepreneurs, and they also take them connecting the venture capital firms. So the ask I give for you is, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't see this ecosystem here, which I will argue that it's young, but you have all the ingredients right here that you should think about from this perspective. How can you be an active participant of the ecosystem? How can you be an ecosystem maker, right? Rather than waiting for someone to come and build an ecosystem in Cluj, you can be that person with your friends, with your community to build that ecosystem. And this is how many of the ecosystem, the mature ones in the US and Europe, has been built. It took many of years, but it started in a bar. They started in a classroom, and they evolved from very small to their current state. So it takes everyone at the table to do that. And the healthy ecosystem has this positive signaling. The more success stories that you provide from the ecosystem, more people want to participate and contribute to the ecosystem, and the better it gets. My last slide here is really a call to action, which is what Philip wanted me to do. It's really a challenge for you. And we see incredible talents here. When I was doing research and just learning about Romania, it's amazing the amount of technical talent, how educated the workforce is here. You have the entrepreneurship DNA, from family businesses to small business to success stories that moved on Silicon Valley, and you have a fairly healthy economy. And then capital, there isn't a lot of venture capital here today, but if you have a good idea, you build products, you have an ecosystem, the investors are going to come to your ecosystem, right? Just as the Silicon Valley investors are going to other parts of the US to find interesting companies, they will come to you. But it takes all of you here to really think about what can you do to build this together. The ecosystem doesn't come by others. It's always built by the locals who understand the markets, and it grows organically. So, I will end with that. And again, the call to action is be an ecosystem maker and contributor.
Thank you very much. I like that. So that's a very good call to action. So next year you can tell her what you did to build the ecosystem. So I really like the call to action. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for your talk. Much appreciated. Since we're short on time, we'll not take any questions, but I'm sure you can hunt Joyce down in the lobby if you want to ask her something directly. So thank you very much, Joyce.